Grandma, why does Mommy call you the ATM? That question echoed across the Thanksgiving dinner table, spoken by my 5-year-old grandson, with the innocent curiosity only a child possesses. 23 relatives froze mid-bite. Forks clattered. My daughter-in-law's face drained of color like someone had pulled a plug. For 5 years, I had written check after check. $287,000. Down payments, tuition, emergencies that never got repaid. I thought I was being a loving mother and grandmother. Turns out I was just a walking checkbook with a heartbeat. What I discovered after that dinner, the bank statements, the recorded phone call where my daughter-in-law laughed about milking the old lady, changed everything. And what I did at Christmas dinner? Let's just say the look on their faces when I ripped that $50,000 check into pieces was absolutely priceless. I'm Monica Thornton, 68 years old, and this is my story. If you're watching this, please subscribe and let me know where you are watching from. The house feels different when you're the only one in it. After Harold passed 8 years ago, I thought the silence would eventually feel peaceful. Instead, it just felt empty. I'd wake up at 6 every morning out of habit. 35 years as a senior accountant at Morrison Manufacturing will do that to you. And I'd sit at the kitchen table with my coffee, waiting. Waiting for what? For my phone to ring. Derek called maybe once a week, sometimes twice if I was lucky. But looking back now, I realized something I was too blind to see then. He only called when he needed something. Mom, the car broke down. Can you help with the repair? Mom, Ethan's school is asking for the tuition deposit early. Mom, Vanessa's hours got cut. We're a little short this month. And every single time I said yes. Because that's what mothers do, right? We give. We sacrifice. We tell ourselves our children will remember, will appreciate, will one day return the love we poured into them. The last time I saw Ethan before Thanksgiving, I had to drive 2 hours to their house. They never came to me, not once in 3 years. When I mentioned it to Derek, he said they were just so busy. Vanessa nodded along, that practiced smile on her face, and changed the subject to how Ethan needed new shoes for soccer. I bought the shoes. Of course I did. What I didn't realize was that I had become a habit for them. Not a mother, not a grandmother, just a reliable source of funds that never asked questions and never said no. I kept a ledger, you know. Old habits from my accounting days. Every check, every transfer, every loan that was never repaid. I wrote it all down. I just never added it up until I had to. The call came 3 weeks before Thanksgiving. I remember because I was sorting through Harold's old photo albums, something I did when the loneliness got too heavy. My phone lit up with Vanessa's name, and I felt that familiar flutter of hope. Maybe she was calling just to chat. Maybe she wanted to tell me about Ethan's day at school. Mom, how are you? I was just thinking about you. Her voice was honey-sweet. That should have been my first warning. I'm fine, dear. How's Ethan? Oh, he's wonderful, growing so fast. He asked about you yesterday, actually. Said he misses Grandma Moni. My heart swelled. I miss him too. Maybe I could come visit next. Actually, Mom, that's kind of why I'm calling. A pause. The sound of her adjusting the phone. Derek's been looking at this amazing opportunity, a friend's startup. But we'd need to move fast on the investment, and things are just a little tight right now. There it was. I transferred $3,000 that afternoon for Ethan's piano lessons. Vanessa thanked me quickly and hung up. She didn't call back to confirm the money arrived. She didn't send a photo of Ethan at his first lesson. 2 days later, I saw her Facebook post. A new designer handbag, #treatyourself. The bag cost $2,800. I know because I looked it up. I told myself it was a coincidence. I told myself Vanessa wouldn't do that. I told myself a lot of things that year. But here's what I never told myself, not once in 5 years. Thank you, because I never received one. Let me tell you about my daughter-in-law. Vanessa Harper, Vanessa Thornton now, walked into our lives 6 years ago like she owned the room. Beautiful, ambitious, always saying exactly what you wanted to hear. Derek was smitten from the first date. I was cautiously optimistic. She's going places, Mom, Derek told me, his eyes bright with that puppy love glow. She's got plans. Big plans. What I didn't realize was that those plans included my retirement fund. At their wedding, which I paid $45,000 for, by the way, Vanessa hugged me and whispered, "Thank you so much, Mom. You're the best." Then she turned to greet her sorority sisters and didn't speak to me again for the rest of the night. Derek changed after the wedding. Not all at once, but slowly, like water wearing down stone. The confident young man who used to call me every Sunday became someone who avoided eye contact when Vanessa was in the room. He'd start to say something, and she'd cut in with that bright, sharp voice of hers, and he'd just stop. I remember one visit, maybe 2 years into their marriage. Derek and I were alone in the kitchen for just a moment while Vanessa was upstairs with Ethan. "Mom," he said quietly, "I wanted to tell you—" "Derek!" Vanessa's voice rang down the stairs. "Can you come help me with Ethan's bath?" He looked at me with something in his eyes. Guilt, maybe. Or apology. Then he walked away without finishing his sentence. He never brought it up again, and I never asked. Maybe that was my biggest mistake. I saw the signs. I just didn't want to believe what they meant. Then there's Ethan. My grandson came into this world 5 years ago, and the moment I held him, everything else faded away. He had Harold's eyes, that same warm hazel that crinkled at the corners when he smiled. Looking at Ethan was like seeing my husband again, just for a moment. "Grandma Moni!" he'd squeal whenever I visited, launching himself at my legs with the full-body enthusiasm only small children possess. He'd drag me to his room to show me his drawings, his toy cars, the caterpillar he'd found in the backyard. Every visit, he'd ask if I could stay for just one more story. I'd buy him books, clothes, educational toys, things I thought he'd enjoy. Vanessa would take them with a tight smile and say, "Oh, Mom, you shouldn't have." Most of those gifts, I noticed, never appeared in his room on my next visit. Once, when Ethan was about 3, he tugged on my sleeve and asked, "Grandma, why don't you live with us?" I didn't have an answer that wouldn't break my own heart. The truth is, I kept giving money because of Ethan. Every check I wrote, I told myself it was for his future, his education, his stability. If Derek and Vanessa were comfortable, Ethan would be taken care of. That's what I believed. But sometimes, late at night, I'd wonder, how much of my money actually went to my grandson? How much went to designer bags and weekend getaways and things that had nothing to do with a little boy who just wanted his grandmother to stay for one more story? I pushed those thoughts away until I couldn't anymore. It was a Tuesday night, 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, when I finally did what I should have done years ago. I sat down at my kitchen table with a cup of cold coffee and a stack of bank statements going back 5 years. My reading glasses kept sliding down my nose. My hands were shaking, but I didn't know why. Not yet. I started adding. The down payment for their house, $80,000. "Just a loan, Mom. We'll pay you back as soon as Derek gets his bonus." That was 4 years ago. The bonus came and went. The repayment never did. Ethan's private school tuition, $45,000 over 3 years. "Public schools in our district are terrible, Mom. You want the best for Ethan, don't you?" Emergency car repairs, $8,000, 3 times in 1 year. I later learned Vanessa had traded in Derek's sedan for an SUV, a luxury SUV. Medical bills, home repairs, investment opportunities, a vacation they desperately needed for their mental health. The numbers climbed, 60,000, 100,000, 150. When I reached the final total, I had to set down my pen. My vision blurred, and I realized I was crying. $287,450. That was nearly half of my retirement savings, half of everything Harold and I had worked our entire lives to build. Half of my security, my future, my peace of mind, gone. And the worst part? I had a $50,000 check sitting in my desk drawer, already written out, waiting to be signed. For Derek's friend's startup opportunity. I picked up that check and stared at it for a long time. My phone buzzed. Vanessa's name flashed on the screen. I didn't answer. For the first time in 5 years, I didn't answer. Vanessa called back the next morning, and the morning after that. By the third day, she'd switched tactics. Derek's name appeared on my phone instead. "Mom, hey. Vanessa said she's been trying to reach you. Everything okay?" "I've been busy," I said. It wasn't a lie. I'd been busy staring at bank statements and questioning every decision I'd made in the last 5 years. "Oh, okay. Well, listen, about that investment opportunity I mentioned, my buddy really needs an answer soon. The startup is taking off, and if we get in now, the returns could be huge. I was thinking maybe 50,000. I know it's a lot, but I'll bring the check to Thanksgiving," I heard myself say. Derek's relief was audible. "Really? Mom, thank you. Seriously, Vanessa's going to be so happy." "I'll bet she is," I thought. After we hung up, I took the check out of my drawer. $50,000. I'd written the amount, the date, Derek's name. All it needed was my signature. I picked up my pen, positioned it over the signature line, and stopped. Something felt wrong. Not guilt. I'd felt plenty of that over the years, every time I said yes when I should have said no. This was different. This was a whisper in the back of my mind, Harold's voice maybe asking, "Monica, what are you doing?" I set the pen down. The check went back in my purse, unsigned. I told myself I'd sign it at Thanksgiving, hand it over in person, see the gratitude in their eyes. But some part of me, the part that had spent 35 years catching discrepancies in ledgers and spotting numbers that didn't add up, that part knew. Something was about to change. Thanksgiving Day arrived cold and gray, the kind of November weather that makes you want to stay home with a blanket and a book. Instead, I drove 2 hours to my son's house. Their house, the one I'd helped pay for, the one with the new kitchen renovation I'd noticed in Vanessa's Instagram posts. Granite countertops, stainless steel appliances, a wine fridge. I didn't remember being asked to contribute to that particular project, but I had a feeling I'd funded it anyway, one emergency at a time. 23 people filled the space when I arrived. Derek's side of the family, Vanessa's parents and siblings, a few friends who'd become like family. The house smelled like roasting turkey and cinnamon candles, Pinterest perfect, just like Vanessa liked it. "Mom!" Derek met me at the door with a hug that felt slightly too tight, slightly too long. "So glad you made it." Vanessa appeared behind him, radiant in a cream-colored sweater that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. "Monica, you look wonderful. Come in, come in." She didn't offer to take my coat. My sister Carol was already there, standing by the fireplace with a glass of wine. She caught my eye and gave me a look I couldn't quite read. Concern, maybe. Or warning. "How are you holding up?" she murmured when I joined her. "Fine. Why?" Carol glanced toward Vanessa, who was laughing loudly at something her mother had said. "I don't know. Something feels off today. Just be careful, okay?" Before I could ask what she meant, a small body crashed into my legs. "Grandma Moni!" Ethan, my beautiful, innocent grandson. I had no idea he was about to change everything. Dinner was served at 6 o'clock sharp. The long table stretched across the dining room, covered in white linen and dotted with candles. Vanessa had outdone herself, or rather, the caterer she'd hired had outdone themselves. I recognized the logo on the serving dishes from a high-end restaurant downtown. I wondered how much that cost. Then I stopped wondering, because I already knew the answer. Ethan insisted on sitting next to me. He chattered happily about his toy dinosaurs, his best friend Marcus, the funny thing his teacher said last week. I listened and smiled and tried to ignore the knot forming in my stomach. The check was still in my purse, unsigned. Halfway through the meal, somewhere between the cranberry sauce and the second round of wine, it happened. Ethan tugged on my sleeve. His little face was scrunched up in that way children get when they're working through a puzzle. "Grandma," he said, loud enough for the whole table to hear, "why does Mommy call you the ATM?" The room went silent. Not quiet. Silent. The kind of silence that has weight, that presses against your eardrums. 23 people stopped mid-motion, forks frozen, conversations dead. I looked at Vanessa. Her face had gone white, chalk white, the kind of pale that comes from genuine terror. Derek moved first. He lunged across the table and clapped his hand over Ethan's mouth. "Buddy, that's not... We don't... Derek!" Vanessa's voice was sharp, controlled. "Take him to his room, now!" But I'd seen it. In that split second before she composed herself, I'd seen the truth in her eyes. The panic, the guilt, the absolute certainty that she'd been caught. "Ethan, sweetheart," I said softly, "where did you hear Mommy say that?" "She says it on the phone," he answered, innocent and confused. "She says, 'Time to call the ATM,' and then she calls you." "What's an ATM, Grandma?" I didn't answer. I stood up, walked to the bathroom, and locked the door behind me. Through the wood, I could hear Vanessa's voice, high and thin. "I told you to keep him quiet!" I don't remember driving home. The 2-hour trip passed in a blur of highway lights and unanswered questions. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles ached. The radio stayed off. The silence was deafening. The check was still in my purse, still unsigned. When I finally pulled into my driveway, I sat in the dark for a long time. The engine ticked as it cooled. My phone had buzzed 17 times during the drive. 5 calls from Vanessa, 3 from Derek, 9 text messages I couldn't bring myself to read. Inside, the house felt emptier than ever. I made myself a cup of tea I didn't drink. I sat at the kitchen table where Harold and I had shared 32 years of meals, conversations, and quiet evenings. I thought about calling Carol, but what would I say? You were right, something was off. At midnight, I finally opened the text messages. Vanessa, "Mom, I am so sorry about what Ethan said. Kids repeat things without understanding. Please call me so we can clear this up." Vanessa, "It was just a silly joke between me and my girlfriends. You know how we are." Derek, "Mom, please call back. Vanessa didn't mean it that way. She loves you. We all do." Derek, "Mom?" Derek, "Are you okay?" I read each message twice. Then I opened my laptop and pulled up my bank statements. For the next 3 hours, I went through every transaction from the past 5 years. Every transfer, every check, every loan and emergency and investment opportunity. When the sun came up, I was still sitting there, staring at the screen. $287,450, and a nickname, the ATM. 3 days passed. I didn't leave the house. The phone kept ringing. Vanessa's calls came like clockwork, morning, noon, and evening, each voicemail sweeter than the last. By day 2, she'd switched to the concerned daughter-in-law act. "Mom, we're really worried about you. Derek can barely sleep. Please, just let us know you're okay." I wasn't okay. But I wasn't ready to tell them that. The silence gave me time to think. Too much time, maybe. I replayed every interaction from the past 5 years, searching for signs I'd missed. The way Vanessa's voice always lifted when she was about to ask for money. The way Derek would disappear from the room whenever financial conversations came up. The way my contributions were accepted with a quick, "Thanks, Mom," and never mentioned again. I'd been so desperate to be needed that I'd ignored what was right in front of me. On the 3rd day, I pulled out my old ledger, the one I'd kept out of habit, recording every check and transfer. I'd always told myself it was just good bookkeeping. Now I realized it was something else. Evidence. Every entry was dated. Every amount was exact. Every note I'd written. Derek's car repair. Ethan's school fees. Emergency home repair. Was a breadcrumb leading back to the truth. I flipped through the pages slowly, watching the numbers climb. And for the first time, I asked myself the question I'd been avoiding. What am I going to do about this? The answer didn't come that night, but something else did. A memory. Margaret Sullivan, my college roommate, estate attorney. The friend who'd warned me 3 years ago to set up a trust instead of giving cash directly. I hadn't listened then. Maybe it was time to start. Carol showed up on day 4 without calling first. She stood on my doorstep with a casserole dish in one hand and a bottle of wine in the other. "You look terrible," she said. "Let me in." I did. We sat at the kitchen table, that same table where I'd spent the last 3 nights drowning in bank statements, and Carol poured us both generous glasses of red wine. "I saw something at Thanksgiving," she said quietly. Before Ethan's little announcement, Vanessa was in the hallway, on her phone. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but she was laughing pretty loud. My stomach tightened. "What did she say?" Carol set down her glass. "She called you the Golden Goose. Said something about how you'd come through again with the investment money." The Golden Goose. Not just an ATM. A golden goose. An endless source of wealth to be plucked and plucked until there was nothing left. "There's more," Carol continued. "I've heard her talk like that before at the 4th of July barbecue last year. I didn't want to say anything because I thought maybe I'd misunderstood. But after what Ethan said, you didn't misunderstand." "No." Carol reached across the table and took my hand. "Monica, you need to talk to someone. A lawyer. Someone who can help you figure out your options." I was thinking about Margaret Sullivan. Remember her from college? The estate attorney? Carol nodded slowly. "That's actually perfect. She always was the smartest one in our group." I pulled out my phone before I could talk myself out of it. Margaret's number was still in my contacts, unused for 2 years. "What are you going to say?" Carol asked. I took a deep breath. "The truth. For the first time in 5 years, I'm going to tell someone the truth." Margaret answered on the second ring. "Monica Thornton. It has been too long." Her voice was exactly as I remembered, warm but direct, the voice of someone who'd spent 40 years cutting through nonsense to get to the truth. "I was wondering when you'd call." "You were?" A pause. "I saw the family photos Vanessa posted on Facebook, the new kitchen, the vacation to Cabo. I did some math in my head and thought, that doesn't add up on a software engineer's salary." Another pause. I hoped I was wrong. I told her everything. The money, the excuses, the ledger I'd kept for 5 years. Ethan's innocent question, and Vanessa's guilty face. By the time I finished, my tea had gone cold and my voice had gone hoarse. Margaret was quiet for a moment. Then, "Monica, I warned you about this 3 years ago." "I know. I told you to set up a trust, to protect yourself." "I know. And you didn't listen because you wanted to believe the best about your son." I closed my eyes. "I know." "Okay." I heard her shifting papers on the other end of the line. "Here's what we're going to do. I want you to bring me those bank statements, all of them, and that ledger you mentioned. We're going to document everything, every transfer, every loan, every promise that was never kept. And then? Then we're going to talk about your options. Updating your will, setting up a trust for Ethan that Derek and Vanessa can't touch, protecting what's left of your assets." She paused. "And maybe, if you're ready, we'll talk about something else." "What?" "Boundaries, Monica. Real ones. The kind that hurt to set but save your life in the long run." I gripped the phone tighter. "When can I come in?" "Tomorrow, 9 a.m. And Monica?" "Yes?" "Don't answer any more of Vanessa's calls." Margaret's office smelled like old books and coffee. She'd cleared her entire morning for me. The conference table was covered with my bank statements, 5 years of transactions spread out like evidence at a crime scene, which, in a way, they were. "Let's start from the beginning," Margaret said, uncapping a yellow highlighter. "Walk me through each major transaction." We went line by line. The down payment on the house, the tuition payments, the car repairs, 3 in 1 year, each one conveniently timed right before Vanessa posted photos of a new purchase. "This one," Margaret said, tapping a highlighted entry, $8,000 for emergency medical expenses. What was the emergency? I tried to remember. Derek said Ethan had an ear infection that needed specialist treatment. "And did you ever see a medical bill, an explanation of benefits?" I hadn't. I just trusted. "This one," another tap, $12,000 for home repairs after water damage. But look at the date, 2 weeks before Vanessa's Instagram post about their new bathroom renovation. I stared at the numbers, seeing them clearly for the first time. Not as acts of love, but as a pattern, a systematic extraction of wealth disguised as family obligation. "Monica," Margaret said gently, "this isn't about your son being in a tough spot. This is about your daughter-in-law identifying you as a resource and exploiting you for 5 years. But Derek knew." She pointed to another entry. "This transfer went directly into an account with only Vanessa's name on it. Not a joint account. Vanessa's personal account. The room felt very cold suddenly. $287,450, Margaret said. That's what they took from you. The question is, what do you want to do about it? I didn't have an answer. Not yet, but I was starting to find one. Carol called me that evening, her voice tight with excitement. Monica, I found something you need to hear. She came over within the hour, clutching her phone like it contained state secrets. In a way, it did. Remember how I was filming the kids at Thanksgiving? Getting footage for the family Christmas video? She was scrolling through her camera roll, fingers trembling slightly. I was in the living room, but my phone picked up audio from the hallway. I didn't notice it until I was editing today. She pressed play. At first there was just background noise, children laughing, the clink of dishes. Then Vanessa's voice, clear as a bell, coming through a doorway. Oh my God, you should see her face when I call. She's like Pavlov's dog, I swear. I just push the right buttons and money comes out. Another woman's voice, laughing. How much this time? $50,000 for Derek's startup investment. Air quotes audible in her tone. I've got her wrapped around my finger. She's basically an ATM with legs. More laughter. Doesn't she ever say no? Never. That's the beauty of it. She's so desperate to be the good mother, the loving grandmother. Milking the old lady is the easiest job I've ever had. The recording ended. I sat frozen, the phone still in my hand. I'd suspected. I'd known on some level. But hearing it, hearing my daughter-in-law laugh about exploiting me, about manipulating my love for my son and grandson, that was different. That was proof. There's more, Carol said quietly. At the end, Vanessa says something else. She reached over and scrubbed forward a few seconds. And the best part? Vanessa's voice again, smug and satisfied. Derek knows. He knows and he doesn't care. As long as the money keeps coming, he keeps his mouth shut. I set the phone down carefully, like it might explode. I need to call Margaret, I said. My voice sounded strange, calm, cold. For the first time since Thanksgiving, I wasn't sad anymore. I was angry. I called Derek that night. Part of me hoped the recording was wrong, hoped Vanessa had been exaggerating, showing off for her friend, hoped my son, my boy, the child I'd raised, the young man I'd sacrificed so much for, hadn't really known. Mom? Derek's voice flooded with relief. Finally, I've been so worried. Listen, about Thanksgiving. Derek! I cut him off. I need to ask you something and I need you to tell me the truth. Silence on the other end. Did you know? About what Vanessa calls me? About how she talks about me to her friends? The silence stretched longer. I could hear him breathing, could almost see him running his hand through his hair the way he did when he was nervous. Mom, It's complicated. It's a yes or no question. Another pause. Then quietly, yes, I knew. The word hit me like a physical blow. I had to grip the edge of the kitchen counter to stay upright. I knew, he continued, his voice cracking. But I thought, Vanessa handles all our finances, and she said it was just easier this way. She said you wanted to help. She said. I repeated the words flatly. And you believed her. For 5 years, you watched your wife treat your mother like a cash machine, and you said nothing. I didn't want to fight with her, Mom. You don't understand what it's like. She gets so angry, and I thought it was easier. Easier. The word tasted bitter. It was easier to let your mother be humiliated, to let your son grow up thinking ATM is Grandma's nickname. Mom, please. Goodbye, Derek. I hung up before he could respond. Then I sat in the dark for a very long time, mourning the son I thought I'd raised. I met Margaret for coffee 2 days later. Something had shifted in me since that phone call with Derek. The grief was still there, buried deep, but on the surface, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Clarity. You look different, Margaret observed as I sat down across from her. Calmer. I know what I need to do. I laid out my plan. The Christmas gathering was 3 weeks away, the annual Thornton family dinner. hosted at Derek and Vanessa's house. Both sides of the family would be there. Vanessa's parents, Derek's aunts and uncles, cousins, friends, everyone who mattered. "I want to do it there," I said, "in front of everyone." Margaret raised an eyebrow. "Do what exactly?" "Tell the truth. Show the evidence. Let them all see what Vanessa really is." "Monica," Margaret leaned forward, "I have to ask, is this about justice or is this about revenge?" I considered the question carefully. A week ago, I might not have known the answer. "It's about boundaries," I said finally. "They humiliated me in front of the family. They treated me like I was nothing but a source of income. If I confront them privately, Vanessa will spin it. She'll make me look like the bitter, senile mother-in-law who can't accept that her son has his own life. And if you do it publicly? Then everyone sees the truth, the bank statements, the recording, everything." Margaret was quiet for a moment. Then she nodded slowly. "I'll have the new will ready by then, and the trust documents for Ethan." She met my eyes. "But Monica, once you do this, there's no going back. You understand that?" I thought of Vanessa's voice on that recording, milking the old lady. "I understand," I said. "I'm counting on it." The next 3 weeks were the busiest of my retirement. Margaret and I worked through every detail. The new will was drafted, reviewed, and signed, witnessed by 2 of her paralegals who had no connection to my family. Ethan would inherit everything through a trust that Margaret herself would manage until he turned 25. Derek and Vanessa couldn't touch a penny. Carol helped me organize the evidence. We printed the bank statements, highlighting the most damning transactions. We transferred the recording to a USB drive and tested it on 3 different speakers to make sure it would play clearly. I wrote out what I wanted to say, then rewrote it again. Not a speech, just talking points, facts, numbers, the truth, stripped of emotion. The hardest part was the check. That $50,000 check was still in my purse, still unsigned. Every time I looked at it, I felt a strange mix of anger and sadness. This piece of paper represented everything that had gone wrong. My desperate need to be loved, their willingness to exploit it. "What are you going to do with it?" Carol asked one evening as we reviewed the final preparations. I held the check up to the light. $50,000. The last payment I would ever make. "I'm going to give it to them," I said. Carol stared at me. "What?" "I'm going to give it to them," I repeated. "And then I'm going to take it away." She didn't understand. Not yet. But she would. They all would. Christmas was 4 days away, and I had never felt more ready for anything in my life. Christmas Eve. My phone rang at exactly 7 p.m., Vanessa's name on the screen. I let it ring 3 times before answering. "Monica!" Her voice was honey and silk, the sweetest I'd ever heard it. "Merry Christmas Eve. I just wanted to check in and make sure you're still coming tomorrow." "Of course I'm coming." "Oh, wonderful. We've all missed you so much. Ethan has been asking about you every single day." A practiced pause. "And I wanted to say again how sorry I am about that silly misunderstanding at Thanksgiving. You know how kids are. They repeat things without understanding what they mean." "Mm-hmm. Anyway, Derek mentioned you were bringing that check for the investment opportunity. His friend is so excited. This is really going to change things for us, Monica, for all of us." I looked at the check sitting on my kitchen table, unsigned, ready. "Yes," I said. "I'll have the check with me." "Oh, Mom, you're the best." The relief in her voice was palpable. "I can't wait to see you tomorrow. It's going to be such a special Christmas." "Yes," I agreed. "It certainly will be." After we hung up, I sat in the quiet of my kitchen and thought about what tomorrow would bring. The truth, finally spoken. The evidence, finally revealed. The boundaries, finally set. Vanessa thought I was coming to deliver money. She had no idea I was coming to deliver justice. I picked up the check, looked at it one last time, and smiled. Tomorrow, everything would change. Christmas Day arrived crisp and cold, the kind of December morning that makes everything feel sharp and clear. I dressed carefully. A deep burgundy blouse, Harold's favorite color on me, simple pearl earrings, comfortable shoes, because I had a feeling I'd be standing for a while. Carol picked me up at noon. Margaret was parked down the street, ready to come in if I needed legal backup. "You sure about this?" Carol asked as we pulled into Derek's driveway. I looked at the house. The house my money had helped buy. The Christmas lights twinkling on the porch, the wreath on the door, all of it picture perfect, just like Vanessa liked it. I've never been more sure of anything. Inside, the house was packed. 28 people this time, even more than Thanksgiving. Both sides of the family, friends, neighbors. Vanessa's parents sat in the living room, her father nursing a scotch. Robert, Harold's older brother, was there too, looking distinguished in his holiday sweater. Vanessa swept toward me the moment I walked in, arms outstretched. "Monica, Merry Christmas!" She pulled me into a hug that felt like a performance. "You look wonderful. Come in, come in. Can I get you some wine?" "Water is fine." I scanned the room, taking mental notes. Witnesses everywhere. Perfect. Derek appeared at my elbow, looking nervous. "Hey, Mom. Glad you came." "Where's Ethan?" "Playing upstairs. I'll get him." A few minutes later, my grandson came bounding down the stairs and threw himself into my arms. "Grandma Moni, you came!" I held him tight and whispered, "Of course I did, sweetheart." Then I looked at Vanessa and smiled. Let the show begin. Dinner was served at 6, just like Thanksgiving. The dining table groaned under the weight of the feast. Honey-glazed ham, roasted vegetables, 3 different kinds of pie. Catered again, of course. I wondered briefly whose money had paid for it this time. Vanessa worked the room like a politician at a fundraiser, making sure everyone's glass was full and everyone heard about her latest home improvement project. "We're thinking of adding a sunroom in the spring. Derek's been wanting one forever." I caught Derek's eye across the table. He looked away. Ethan sat beside me again, chattering about the presents he hoped Santa had brought. I listened and nodded and tried to memorize every detail of his face. Whatever happened next, I wanted to remember this moment, the last moment of normalcy before everything changed. Halfway through dessert, Vanessa leaned toward me with that practiced smile. "Monica, after dinner, let's step into the study for a minute. Derek's friend is actually on standby. He's so eager to finalize the investment details." "Actually," I said, setting down my fork, "I was thinking we could discuss it here, in front of everyone." Something flickered in Vanessa's eyes. Confusion, maybe, or the first hint of fear. "Oh, that's not necessary. It's just boring financial stuff." "I insist." I smiled. "After all, families should share everything, shouldn't they?" The table had gone quiet. 28 pairs of eyes were watching us now. Vanessa's smile didn't waver, but I saw her knuckles whiten around her wine glass. "Of course," she said. "Whatever you'd like, Mom." I waited until the plates were cleared and the coffee was poured. Then I stood up. The room fell silent. Not the gradual quiet of a conversation winding down, but the sudden, sharp silence of 28 people realizing something was about to happen. "I want to thank everyone for being here today," I began, my voice steady. "Family gatherings like this have always been important to me. Harold and I built our lives around moments like these." Vanessa was smiling, but her eyes were wary. Derek had gone pale. "Before we open presents, I'd like to share something with all of you. Vanessa mentioned that I was bringing a check today for an investment opportunity." I reached into my purse and pulled out the check. $50,000, still unsigned. "Here it is, $50,000, made out to my son Derek." Vanessa's smile widened. Relief flooded her face. "Oh, Monica, that's so generous." "But before I hand it over," I continued, "I think everyone deserves to know exactly how much I've contributed to this family over the past 5 years. The relief on Vanessa's face curdled into something else. "Mom," Derek said quickly, "maybe this isn't the time." "It's exactly the time." I reached into my purse again and pulled out the folder I'd prepared. Bank statements, highlighted, organized, undeniable. "I've kept very careful records," I said, addressing the room. 35 years as a senior accountant taught me that. And I think you all should see what those records show. I opened the folder and began to read. Vanessa's hand shot out toward Derek. "Stop her!" she hissed. But it was too late. The truth was coming out and nothing was going to stop it. "Let's start with the down payment on this house," I said, holding up the first highlighted statement. $80,000, given to Derek and Vanessa 4 years ago as a loan to help them get started. Never repaid. Murmurs rippled through the room. Vanessa's mother leaned forward, frowning. "Ethan's private school tuition, $45,000 over 3 years. The public schools are terrible, Mom. You want the best for Ethan, don't you?" I let the words hang in the air. "Car repairs, $8,000, 3 separate payments in 1 year. I looked at Vanessa. "Interesting timing, considering you traded in Derek's sedan for a luxury SUV right after the 3rd payment." "This is ridiculous," Vanessa said, her voice rising. "Monica, this is a family matter." "Then let the family hear it." I turned to the next page. Emergency medical expenses, $12,000 for an ear infection that apparently required specialist treatment. Funny, I never saw a single medical bill. Robert, Harold's brother, stood up slowly. "Monica, are you saying what I think you're saying?" "I'm saying that over the past 5 years, I have given Derek and Vanessa $287,450. I let the number land. "That's nearly half of my retirement savings." Gasps. Whispered conversations. Vanessa's father set down his scotch with a heavy thunk. "And every single dollar," I continued, "was taken under the pretense of family obligation, of emergencies that weren't emergencies, of investments that never materialized, of love that was never returned." Derek finally spoke, his voice cracking. "Mom, please, can we talk about this privately?" "We could have," I said. 5 years ago, 3 years ago, last month. But you chose silence, Derek. You chose to stand by while your wife treated me like a walking checkbook." I turned to face Vanessa directly. Or should I say, like an ATM? Vanessa recovered quickly. She was good at that. "Monica, I don't know what you think you heard, but this is clearly a misunderstanding." She turned to the room, spreading her hands in a gesture of bewildered innocence. "I would never disrespect my mother-in-law. Derek, tell them." Derek opened his mouth, but no words came out. "Actually," I said, reaching into my purse one more time, "I have something that might clear things up." I pulled out my phone, already cued to the recording Carol had discovered. The room was absolutely silent as I pressed play. Vanessa's voice filled the dining room, clear and unmistakable. "I just push the right buttons and money comes out." Laughter from the recording. Then, "How much this time?" $50,000 for Derek's startup investment. I've got her wrapped around my finger. She's basically an ATM with legs." I watched Vanessa's face as her own words echoed through the room. The color drained from her cheeks. Her mouth opened and closed, but nothing came out. The recording continued. "Milking the old lady is the easiest job I've ever had." And then the final blow. "Derek knows. He knows, and he doesn't care. As long as the money keeps coming, he keeps his mouth shut." I stopped the recording. The silence that followed was deafening. Vanessa's father stood up abruptly. "Linda, get your coat. We're leaving." "Dad, wait," Vanessa started. "I don't want to hear it." He wouldn't look at her. "I didn't raise you to be this." He took his wife's arm and walked out without another word. Vanessa stood frozen, watching her parents leave. For the first time since I'd known her, she had nothing to say. I turned to face my son. "And now, Derek, let's talk about that check." I held up the check so everyone could see it. $50,000, I said. "This is what Vanessa has been waiting for, the latest withdrawal from the Bank of Monica." My hands were steady. My voice was calm. 35 years of boardroom presentations had prepared me for this moment. "I wrote this check 3 weeks ago. I was going to sign it at Thanksgiving, hand it over with a smile, and watch my daughter-in-law pretend to be grateful." I paused. "But then my grandson asked me a question, and everything changed." Vanessa found her voice. "Monica, please. We can work this out. I'll pay you back, I swear." "With what money, Vanessa? The money I gave you? The money you'll ask for next month?" I shook my head. "No, this ends now." I looked at the check one last time. $50,000, the price of my self-respect. Then, slowly and deliberately, I tore it in half. The sound of ripping paper was impossibly loud in the silent room. I tore the halves into quarters, then into eighths. The pieces fluttered to the floor like snow. "You can't do this!" Vanessa's voice cracked. "You need us! You're old and alone and—" "I'm 68 years old," I said quietly. "I raised a son. I buried a husband. I built a career. I survived." I met her eyes. "I don't need anyone who sees me as an ATM." A small voice broke the silence. "Grandma, are you okay?" Ethan had appeared at my elbow, his face confused and worried. I knelt down and pulled him into my arms. "I'm okay now, sweetheart," I whispered. "For the first time in a long time, I'm really okay." The room erupted. Robert was the first to move. He crossed the dining room in 3 long strides and pulled me into a hug. "Harold would be proud of you," he said quietly. "I'm proud of you." Carol appeared at my other side, tears streaming down her face. "I knew something was wrong. I should have said something sooner." "You said something when it mattered," I told her. "That's what counts." The rest of the family began to stir. Derek's Aunt Patricia approached Vanessa with an expression I'd never seen before: cold, assessing. "My husband and I lent Derek money last year," she said. $5,000 for car trouble. He never paid us back either." Another voice from across the room: "He borrowed from us too, said it was for Ethan's medical bills. And us, something about a roof repair." The revelations cascaded through the room like dominoes falling. It wasn't just me. Derek and Vanessa had been working their way through the entire family, one emergency at a time. Vanessa backed toward the wall, her face a mask of barely controlled panic. "This is insane! You're all overreacting!" "Overreacting?" Robert's voice cut through the noise. "My brother's widow has been bled dry for 5 years, and you think we're overreacting?" He turned to Derek, who hadn't moved from his seat. "And you. Harold would be ashamed of you. Your mother sacrificed everything for you, and you let this happen." Derek said nothing. He just stared at the scattered pieces of the check on the floor. In the chaos, I felt a small hand slip into mine. Ethan looked up at me, confused but trusting. "Grandma, why is everyone yelling?" "Because sometimes," I said softly, "the truth makes people uncomfortable, but it's still the truth." Derek found me in the hallway 20 minutes later. The party had fractured. Half the guests had left. Vanessa had locked herself in the bedroom. The Christmas music still played from somewhere, absurdly cheerful against the wreckage of the evening. "Mom," his voice was hoarse, "please, can we talk?" I looked at my son, really looked at him. The boy I'd raised, the teenager I'd guided through heartbreak and failure, the young man I'd watched walk down the aisle. Somewhere along the way, I'd lost him, or maybe he'd lost himself. "Talk," I said. "I'm sorry." Tears were streaming down his face. "I'm so sorry. I should have stopped it. I should have said something. You should have protected me." My voice was steady, even though my heart was breaking. "That's what family does, Derek. We protect each other." I know. He reached for my hand. I stepped back. "You're apologizing because you got caught," I said quietly, "not because you're sorry for what you did." "That's not true." "Isn't it? For 5 years, you watched your wife treat me like a cash machine. You heard her call me names. You knew, Derek. You knew, and you chose her over me, every single time." He had no answer for that. "I love you," I said. "You're my son, and I will always love you. But I can't trust you anymore. And until you can prove that you've changed, really changed, I don't think I can be around you." I turned and walked away. Behind me, I heard him whisper, "Mom, please." I didn't look back. Vanessa emerged from the bedroom like a cornered animal. Her mascara had run, her perfect hair was disheveled, the polished facade had cracked, and what lay beneath was something raw and ugly. "This is your fault," she hissed at me, stalking across the living room where the remaining family members sat in stunned silence. "You ruined everything. You couldn't just keep writing checks like a good little grandmother. You had to make a scene." "Vanessa." Derek's voice was weak. "Stop." "No!" She whirled on him. "You should have handled this. You should have kept her in line. That's your job." "My job?" Something flickered in Derek's eyes. "My job was to lie to my mother for 5 years?" "Your job was to keep the money coming!" Vanessa's voice had risen to a shriek. "Do you think I married you for your personality? For your dead-end career? I married you because your mother was loaded and too stupid to—" She stopped. The words hung in the air, impossible to take back. The room was absolutely silent. Derek stared at his wife as if seeing her for the first time. You never loved me?" Vanessa's mouth opened and closed. For once she had no clever response, no manipulation, no spin. "I think you should leave," Robert said quietly. "Now." Vanessa looked around the room, at the family members who wouldn't meet her eyes, at the husband who was looking at her with dawning horror, at me, standing calm and still by the doorway. "This isn't over," she spat. Then she grabbed her coat and stormed out. In the silence that followed, a small voice spoke up. "Grandma?" Ethan tugged at my sleeve. "Can I come live with you?" I pulled him close. "We'll figure it out, sweetheart. I promise." I waited until the room had settled before speaking again. Most of Vanessa's side of the family had left. The remaining guests, mostly Harold's relatives, sat in the living room, processing what they'd witnessed. Derek was slumped in an armchair, staring at nothing. "There's one more thing I need to share with everyone," I said. Robert looked up. "Monica, you don't have to." "Yes, I do." I pulled out the final document from my purse. "Last week, I met with my attorney, Margaret Sullivan. Some of you might remember her from Harold's funeral." A few nods around the room. "I've updated my will." I held up the papers. "These documents have been signed, witnessed, and notarized. They're legally binding." Derek's head snapped up. "Mom, let me finish." I kept my voice calm. "Under my previous will, Derek was the primary beneficiary of my estate. That is no longer the case." The room was silent. "My grandson, Ethan, will inherit everything, but not directly." I turned to address the room. "I've established a trust fund in Ethan's name. My friend Margaret Sullivan will serve as the trustee until Ethan turns 25. The funds will be used for his education, his health care, and his future, and only for those purposes." "What about Derek?" Patricia asked. "Derek will not have access to the trust. Neither will Vanessa, should she remain in his life." I met my son's eyes. "I love my grandson. I want to provide for him, but I will not allow my money to be funneled through people who see me as an ATM." Derek's face crumpled. "Mom, This isn't a punishment, Derek. It's a boundary." I folded the documents and placed them back in my purse. "Ethan will be taken care of. That's what matters." Robert nodded slowly. "Harold would approve." "I know," I said. "That's why I did it." Carol drove me home that night. The streets were quiet. Most families tucked inside with their presents and their leftovers and their normal, uncomplicated holiday memories. I watched the Christmas lights blur past the window and tried to process everything that had happened. "How are you feeling?" Carol asked softly. "Tired." I leaned my head against the cold glass. "Relieved. Sad." "All of that makes sense." We drove in silence for a while. Then my phone buzzed. A text from Derek. "Mom, Vanessa is packing. She says she wants a divorce. I don't know what to do." I stared at the message for a long moment. Part of me wanted to respond, to comfort him, to fix things the way I always had. But that part of me had been writing checks for 5 years, and look where it had gotten us. "I'm sorry you're going through this," I typed back. "But this is something you need to figure out on your own." I hit send and put the phone away. "Was that Derek?" Carol asked. "Yes, Vanessa's leaving him." "Good riddance." I should have felt triumphant, vindicated. Instead, I just felt hollow. "Do you regret it?" Carol asked as we pulled into my driveway. "Any of it?" I thought about the question. The bank statements, the recording, the check torn into pieces on the dining room floor, the look on Vanessa's face when her own words were played back to her. "No," I said finally. "I regret waiting so long. I regret not seeing the truth sooner. But tonight?" I shook my head. "Tonight, I took my life back." That night, for the first time in 5 years, I slept without dreaming of what I owed anyone. 1 week after Christmas, Vanessa filed for divorce. The papers were served on New Year's Day, a fitting start to what promised to be a very different year. Derek called me that afternoon, his voice flat and exhausted. "She's asking for half of everything," he said, "including half the equity in the house." The house I'd helped pay for. The irony wasn't lost on me. "I'm sorry, Derek." "Are you?" There was an edge to his voice, "because it feels like you wanted this to happen." I took a deep breath. "What I wanted was for you to see the truth. What happens next is up to you." Silence on the line, then quietly. "She had credit card debt I didn't know about. $42,000. Apparently I'm responsible for half of it in the divorce settlement." $42,000. Hidden, lied about, just like everything else. "I'm going to start seeing a therapist," Derek said. "Someone who specializes in, relationships, boundaries, figuring out how I let this happen." It was the first hopeful thing he'd said since Thanksgiving. "That's good, Derek. That's really good." And I was wondering. He hesitated. "Could I come see you? Not for money. Just to talk. I want to understand what I did wrong. I want to do better." I thought about it. The anger was still there, buried deep, but so was the love, the stubborn, complicated love that mothers carry for their children no matter what. "You can come," I said, "but I have conditions. Anything. No talk of money, ever, and you keep going to therapy for at least a year. Done. Then come for dinner next Sunday, just you." "Okay, Mom," his voice cracked. "Thank you." It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a start. Derek arrived at my door the following Sunday with red-rimmed eyes and a store-bought pie. "I didn't know what to bring," he said, holding it out like a peace offering. "I know it's not homemade, but it's fine." I took the pie and stepped aside to let him in. "Come sit down." We settled at the kitchen table, the same table where I'd added up 5 years of betrayal, where I'd planned my confrontation, where I'd cried alone in the dark. It felt right to have this conversation here. "I've been thinking a lot," Derek said, staring at his hands, "about how this happened, how I let it happen. And I was a coward." He looked up, meeting my eyes for the first time. She was so confident, so sure of everything, and I just went along with it because it was easier than fighting. "Easier," I repeated. The words still stung. I know how that sounds." He ran a hand through his hair. "The therapist says I have trouble with confrontation, that I avoid conflict even when it hurts people I love." "That's a start, recognizing the pattern." "Mom, I need you to understand something." He leaned forward, earnest and desperate. "I never thought of you as an ATM. That was Vanessa's word, not mine." "But you didn't stop her from using it." "No." His voice dropped. "I didn't." We sat in silence for a moment. Then I reached across the table and took his hand. "I'm not going to pretend everything is fine, Derek. It's not. You hurt me deeply, and it's going to take time to rebuild what we had." I squeezed his fingers. "But you're my son, and I'm willing to try, if you are." "I am, Mom. I swear I am." "Then we start here, one dinner at a time. No money, no favors. Just us." He nodded, tears spilling down his cheeks. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a door left open. 3 months after that Christmas dinner, my life looked completely different. The divorce was finalized in February. Vanessa got half the house equity, money that had originally come from me, of course, but she also got half the credit card debt she'd hidden from Derek. $42,000, split down the middle. Poetic justice, I thought. Derek moved into a small apartment across town. Nothing fancy, just 2 bedrooms and a galley kitchen, but he seemed lighter somehow, clearer. He was still seeing his therapist twice a week, and for the first time in years, our Sunday dinners felt like actual conversations instead of performances. I ran into Vanessa's friend Jennifer at the grocery store, he told me one evening, helping me wash dishes. Apparently, Vanessa's already living with some new guy, a real estate developer. Let me guess, wealthy? Very. He shook his head. Jennifer said Vanessa's already talking about redecorating his condo. Same playbook, different target. I should have felt something. Anger, maybe, or vindication. Instead, I just felt tired. Tired of thinking about Vanessa. Tired of the damage she'd caused. She's not our problem anymore, I said. No. Derek dried a plate and set it in the cabinet. She's not. The best part of those 3 months was Ethan. The custody arrangement gave Derek primary custody, with Vanessa getting every other weekend. But more importantly, I got Ethan every Saturday. We'd bake cookies, read books, walk to the park to feed the ducks. Simple things, grandmother things. Grandma, he asked me one Saturday, helping me stir cookie dough, why doesn't Mommy come to our house anymore? I chose my words carefully. Sometimes grown-ups need to live in different places, but your daddy and I will always be here for you. And you'll always be my grandma, not an ATM? I stopped stirring. Where did you hear that word again? I remember from Thanksgiving. He looked up at me with Harold's eyes. I don't want you to be an ATM, Grandma. I just want you to be you. I pulled him into a hug and held on tight. That's all I want too, sweetheart. It was a rainy Saturday in March when Ethan asked the question I'd been expecting. We were curled up on my couch, a picture book open between us, when he set it aside and looked at me with unusual seriousness. Grandma, why did Mommy call you ATM? What does it mean? I took a deep breath. I'd rehearsed this conversation in my head a dozen times, trying to find words a 5-year-old could understand. Do you know what an ATM is? I asked. It's the machine where Daddy gets money. That's right. You put in a card, push some buttons, and money comes out. I paused. Some people thought that's what I was, that they could just ask me for money whenever they wanted, and I would give it to them. Ethan's brow furrowed. But you're not a machine. No, sweetheart. I'm not, and it hurt my feelings when people treated me like one. He was quiet for a moment, processing. Then, is that why you were sad at Christmas? I wasn't sad exactly. I was standing up for myself. Sometimes people treat us badly, and we have to tell them to stop, even if it's hard, even if it makes them angry. Like when Marcus took my toy and I told the teacher? Exactly like that. Ethan nodded slowly. Then he crawled into my lap and wrapped his arms around my neck. I love you, Grandma. Not because of money, just because you're you. My eyes burned with tears I refused to let fall. I love you too, sweetheart. When I grow up, he said solemnly, I'm going to take care of you, with my own money that I earn. I held him tighter and smiled into his hair. That's the most wonderful thing anyone has ever said to me. Sometimes, late at night, I sit in my living room and think about everything that happened. The money, the lies, the moment my 5-year-old grandson cracked open a truth I'd been avoiding for years, the sound of paper tearing as I ripped that check into pieces. I don't regret any of it. Not anymore. $287,000. That's what I paid for the most important lesson of my life, that love without boundaries isn't love at all. It's exploitation dressed up in pretty words and family obligations. I look at the photos on my mantle now. Harold on our wedding day, Derek as a gap-toothed kid, Ethan's first birthday, and I feel something I haven't felt in years, peace. Not the peace of having solved all my problems, the peace of knowing I can face them. Derek and I are rebuilding slowly. He comes for dinner every Sunday, and we talk about real things now, his therapy, his job, his hopes for the future. He's not the son I thought I raised, but maybe he's becoming the man he was always meant to be. I have to believe that's possible. Vanessa is someone else's problem now. I heard through the grapevine that she's already pushing her new boyfriend to buy a bigger house, already hinting about engagement rings. Some people never change, but that's not my burden to carry anymore. And Ethan, my beautiful, honest, wonderful grandson, he's the reason I finally found the courage to stand up for myself. His innocent question at that Thanksgiving table was the match that lit the fire. I'll be grateful to him for the rest of my life. I didn't tear up that check for revenge. I tore it up for freedom. And freedom, I've learned, is worth more than any amount of money. 6 months after that Christmas dinner, I wrote a letter. Not to Derek or Vanessa or anyone in particular, just to myself. A promise, a declaration, a line in the sand. I, Monica Thornton, will never again allow anyone to treat me as a source of funds rather than a person worthy of respect. I will love generously, but I will also love wisely. I will give when giving is right, but I will not give to avoid conflict or buy affection. I will set boundaries, even when they're painful, because boundaries are how we teach people to treat us. I will remember that my worth is not measured in dollars. I folded the letter and tucked it into my jewelry box, next to Harold's wedding ring and the pearl earrings my mother gave me on my 18th birthday. Treasures, reminders, anchors. Last Saturday, Ethan and I sat on my back porch watching the sunset. The sky was painted in shades of orange and pink, and the air smelled like the honeysuckle growing along my fence. "Grandma," Ethan said, leaning against my shoulder, "are you happy?" I thought about the question, really thought about it. 6 months ago, I would have said no. I would have said I was tired, lonely, taken for granted. I would have said I was an ATM with legs. But now? "Yes, sweetheart," I said, pulling him close. "I really am." "Good." He smiled up at me with Harold's eyes. "Because you deserve to be happy." Out of the mouths of babes, I'm Monica Thornton. I'm 68 years old. I spent 5 years being exploited by people who should have loved me. And I spent one Christmas dinner taking my life back. If you're watching this and you recognize yourself in my story, if someone in your life treats you like a resource instead of a person, I want you to know something. It's never too late to set a boundary. It's never too late to demand respect. It's never too late to tear up the check.